I think enough time has passed that we can officially start asking what is going on with Paul Skenes. For the first 2 years of his Major League career, Skenes looked almost untouchable. He came into Major League Baseball throwing 100 miles an hour, striking out basically everybody, and immediately established himself as one of the best pitchers on the planet. In 2024, he ended the year with a 1.96 ERA, and in 2025, he followed it up with another 1.97. In 2 seasons, 2 ERAs sub 2, and then in 2026, suddenly, Paul Skenes' ERA is approaching 4. His fastball velocity is dropping, he's getting hit harder in certain situations, and over his last 9 starts, his ERA is approaching 6. So what happened? Is Paul Skenes hurt and trying to play through it? Has the league just figured him out? Because when you actually dig into the numbers, the answer gets really interesting. Let's talk about first his absolutely ridiculous start to his career. We need to remember just how insane Paul Skenes was before this season. When Skenes debuted in 2024, he wasn't pitching like a rookie. He was more pitching like a Cy Young winner. He finished that season with a 1.96 ERA, striking out 33.1% of all batters he faced. Opponents weren't hitting the ball hard against him, they weren't walking, and most importantly, they weren't even getting on base. His expected batting average allowed was just a measly .191. And somehow, he basically did it again in 2025, posting a 1.97, and his strikeout percentage dropped a little from 33.1 to 29.5, which is still an elite pace. By 2025, his walk rate actually improved, and he established himself as arguably the best pitcher in baseball. At that point, it wasn't just one incredible rookie season. This was who Paul Skenes was, which makes 2026 just even more confusing. 2026 looks completely different because you look at his ERA this year and something immediately jumps off the page. Depending on the point you look at his numbers, Skenes' ERA has climbed into the high to mid 3s. That's almost double what it was during his first 2 seasons. And as of recently, things have gotten even worse. Over a 9-start stretch, Skenes has posted a 5.79 ERA. His record's fallen to 9-11, and Pittsburgh has gone 9-16 in his starts. Those numbers was simply not associated with Paul Skenes before, and perhaps the biggest red flag of all, his fastball velocity is way down. As you can see from this chart, where did his velocity go? Everybody remembers the guy that first came into the league. You basically expected to see 100 on the radar gun every single night. In 2024, Skenes' four-seam fastball averaged around 98.8 miles per hour, and in 2025, it dipped a little bit, but still sat right around 98.1 to 98.2. It's just a small decline. Come 2026, it's roughly 97 miles an hour. And lately, it's been even lower. Against Miami, Skenes' fastball averaged just 95.7 miles an hour. That was the lowest average fastball velocity of any start in his Major League career. And he didn't throw a single pitch at 97 miles per hour. Think about that. This is Paul Skenes we're talking about, a guy whose entire introduction into Major League Baseball was essentially good luck hitting 100, and now we're watching starts where he isn't even touching 97. That doesn't automatically mean he's injured. The Pirates have said there isn't an injury, but it absolutely gives us something to watch. If Skenes was simply declining as a pitcher, you would expect everything else to be getting worse too. Except it isn't. His strikeout rate is still 30.4%, even higher than it was last year. His walk rate, about 5.7%, almost identical to his first 2 seasons. His expected batting average is still right around 207, and his expected slugging percentage is around 322. Perhaps most importantly, his expected ERA is still under 3. So while Skenes' actual ERA has dramatically jumped, the underlying numbers still basically say this guy is really good. And that's why I don't think the story is as simple as Paul Skenes has been figured out or he's injured. Plenty of people have pointed out what most baseball nerds also agree with, that ERA lies to you a little bit. In comparison, in 2024, his 1.96 ERA, he was actually expected to have a 2.5 ERA based on luck and hard hit rate and a bunch of other factors. In 2025, it was more of the same. His ERA actually sat under 2, but his expected ERA was more like 2.65. In 2026, his ERA's finally climbed above 3, but his expected ERA is roughly 2.8. And that's a huge difference and suggests Skenes is getting a little unlucky. Some balls are finding holes, defensive plays aren't being made, and some sequencing hasn't gone his way. In other words, Skenes wasn't really a sub-2 ERA pitcher last year and the year before, but he's probably not really a 4 ERA pitcher now either. The truth is somewhere in the middle. The problem with his fastball velocity is he's allowing more damage. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. There are some concerning trends behind the velocity. The barrel rate has increased from just a 5.2% to a 6.6% barrel rate. His expected batting average went from .191, like I mentioned earlier, to .202, now around .207. Hitters are having slightly more success against him, but there aren't catastrophic differences, and that's important because hitters haven't completely figured out Skenes, because if that was the case, we would probably see his strikeouts absolutely collapsing, but they're not. We'd see his walk rate increase, but it's not, and we'd see hitters crushing baseballs more, and they're not. The biggest change continues to be just that fastball. That brings us to another possibility. What if some of this is intentional? And I gotta tell you, if it is intentional, he has some of the worst pitching coaches I've ever seen in my life. But Skenes can't throw maximum effort for the next 15 years every single game. For his longevity and injuries to hard-throwing pitchers, a lot of pitching coaches think it's better to ease off the gas a little bit. And also, on top of that, it makes it so he's not striking out as many people, which means he's not throwing as many pitches. He can get outs in 1, 2, or maybe even 3 pitches without people whiffing or just getting a piece. Or there are plenty of what the baseball community call rubber arms in the league who aren't going to strike anybody out, but have a really ground ball rate and a really low barrel rate. Now, let's be honest. There's quite a difference between throwing 100 miles per hour in college or during your first few months in the majors and doing it across 30-plus starts every single season. The MLB season is such a marathon. Skenes has already thrown significantly more major league innings than he did as a rookie, so it's possible we're watching him transition into being a pure power pitcher into a guy who's learning how to dominate without throwing 100 miles an hour every pitch. We've seen plenty of pitchers do this, especially with age, whether that be Jacob deGrom or Clayton Kershaw, or these guys who lose their velocity and have to quote-unquote learn how to pitch rather than learn how to throw the ball by guys. Weirdly enough, his strikeout numbers suggest that this might actually be working. He's throwing slower, but he's still striking out 30% of hitters, which is extremely impressive. The biggest issues and concerns seem to be from the latest start. There's a difference between intentionally dialing your fastball back from 100 to 97, but suddenly averaging 95.7 is where the league needs to start paying attention. Skenes was removed after throwing just 65 pitches in this game. Pittsburgh manager Don Kelly said the move wasn't because of an injury, and that was obviously important. But when your 24-year-old ace is suddenly having the lowest velocity of his major league career and gets pulled after only 65 pitches, people start to ask questions, as they should, whether it was fatigue or mechanical or intentionally conserving his arm. Maybe it's just a temporary dead arm period that pitchers go through sometimes. We don't know yet, but his next few starts are going to tell us a lot. So what's actually wrong with Paul Skenes? I think there's 2 different stories happening at the same time. First, there's the face value ERA. And honestly, I'm not that concerned about it considering his advanced metrics. Paul Skenes is probably never going to maintain a career ERA under 2. That's an insane standard to have, and his expected numbers show that he'll be pitching much better than his ERA would have you believe. He's striking out hitters still, he's limiting walks, and generally, mostly good results when hitters are putting the ball in play. There's a second story though, velocity, and that's something I'm watching. Skenes went from averaging nearly 99 miles per hour as a rookie down to 97, and now we've officially seen a start where he's averaging under 96 miles per hour. And for a normal pitcher, that's not terrifying, but for Paul Skenes, it's a massive part of what makes him Paul Skenes. So no, do I think Paul Skenes suddenly forgot how to pitch? Do I think major league hitters have completely figured him out? Absolutely not. I definitely don't think his 2026 ERA tells the entire story, and I think the advanced numbers still see that he's an elite pitcher. But for the first time in his major league career, there's a legitimate question around his stuff. Where does velocity go? If it comes back, I think we're going to look back at this stretch as nothing more than his first major slump in his young career. But if it doesn't, Paul Skenes might have to become a very different pitcher than the one who took baseball by storm in 2024. And that could end up being one of the biggest stories in baseball. So let me know what you think. Are you worried about Paul? Or do you think this is a very normal rough stretch from a pitcher who has an impossible standard to live by for the rest of his career? If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe, and of course, I'll see you in the next one.